What's up, guys? Welcome to the Line Movement NFL show. It is week 10. We have a Thursday night football game kicking off here in less than an hour. We're going to talk about Colts, Titans, and walk through the week 10 slate. I got Joe Holka here recovering from his sicknesses, and Matt LaMarca. How are we doing, guys?
I'm good, man. Sicknesses, it's plural at this point. I just told you guys a little story. Might as well tell the people here at home. So left a burner on last night, which apparently is a really dangerous thing to do for like a couple hours. Then we noticed it, turned it off. I have to open all of our windows. Now my girlfriend's freaking out that she's got a headache. So so if I happen to just like nod off during the show, probably wasn't COVID, probably was just carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's how my day's going. How you doing, LaMarca?
Same as I said on Tuesday. I'm doing better than you, bud. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about dying from carbon monoxide poison. I'm Rona free, at least at the moment, as far as I know. So hearing your plight recently, I can't really complain in good conscience.
It's tough seeing, man.
All right, guys, let's get into it. We have actually a close game tonight. This one actually projects to be relatively interesting if, Phillip Rivers' noodle arm doesn't fall off at some point. Over, under 48.5, Indianapolis, 1 point favorites here. What are you liking in the betting markets, Matt?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because this line initially opened up Tennessee -2. And now it has swung all the way to Indy -1. So I thought that the Colts were the preferred side. I've been like high on the Colts for some reason all year. And the betting activity has done nothing to push me off of them. So I'm not sure if there's still a ton of value in buying the Colts as 1 point favorites. But I do think that is the sharp side of this contest.
It's wild to me, Joe, because it was just a few weeks ago where, the Titans were one of the only undefeated teams in football, and they're at home, and you're telling me they're an underdog to Phillip Rivers. I go and look at the projected points for these weapons here. There's like no wide receiver projecting over 10 points. What am I missing? I want to hammer the Titans here.
No, it's November, right? Check your calendar. Isn't this the time where we just play Derrick Henry just blindly, no matter the ownership, no matter the price, and then we get our 98-yard runs? Like, that's what I was promised, right? So I don't know. I think the main thing, I guess, in favor of Indy is that, like, literally Tennessee cannot rush the passer at all. So say what you want about the noodle arm for Phillip Rivers, he's going to have a lot of time tonight. So there's something to be said for that for sure. I think he's priced reasonably on DraftKings. We've got a couple cheaper options on the Tennessee side. If you looked into much of like what the roster construction, kind of some of the sims, I know you're deep into the sims for these slates. So I'm always curious kind of what type of structure you're going with.
Yeah, there was. I was reading Eric Beimfor's article over at Roto Grinders. He does the slate IQs, and there was actually a dominant construction for slates like this, and that was the 4-2 construction here. It had offered the most leverage historically by a large margin. So definitely something to consider there. I still think people tend to gravitate to 3-3s with hand builds, especially slates like this where the pricing seems fairly efficient. You can build balanced teams, but I think you definitely push in the direction of a 4-2. And then otherwise, not a ton of surprises as far as how ownership's projecting. You're going to have the two quarterbacks in the big dog, Derrick Henry, projecting as the optimal captains here. So I think that presents a couple interesting leverage spots. Obviously, A.J. Brown has a monstrous ceiling whenever he takes the field. I think he has a touchdown in his last 5 games right now. So, I mean, he's just insanely good. I think the harder thing is figuring out what to do with these Colts pass catchers. I mean, I'm relatively down on all of these guys. We got Michael Pittman here, who's projecting decently. We also have T.Y. Hilton and Pascal. LaMarca, do you have a favorite of these Colts pass catchers?
Yeah, for me, it's Pittman. I just think if you look at his snaps, they're trending in the right direction. Now, granted, they played last week with Pittman, with Hilton out of the lineup, but Pittman was in there on roughly 85% of the Colts snaps. He was the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. He's somebody that they are invested in, somebody that I think they are going to try and get more snaps moving forward. So he's my favorite. I think Hilton, you can play him too. He is still leading the team in target market share over the past month, not by an overwhelming majority or anything like that. but the only thing he really hasn't done is he hasn't scored. So if he can find the end zone tonight, which who knows, maybe anything can happen. Maybe this is a T.Y. Hilton spot. I think Pittman's my favorite. Hilton looks like a nice option too. And then of course, I want me some Mo Alley Cox exposure as well.
Yeah, no Jack Doyle tonight. I was looking around at different projection systems. Some have Burton projecting better. Some have Mo Alley Cox. I do think it's probably close to a coin flip, just because you're hoping to get that touchdown. And those guys, Phillip Rivers loves his tight ends in the red zone. So you're just trying to bank one of those guys for the touchdown. Joe, the other kind of tricky thing here is the Colts running backs. Jonathan Taylor continues to struggle. The team, there was this report that Frank Reich scripts the first 15 plays of the game. That's where Jonathan Taylor saw the majority of his touches. And then the offensive coordinator rides the hot hand the rest of the game. And the offensive coordinator clearly prefers some combination of Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines. All of these guys are projecting, I don't know, relatively similar here and similar ownership. Do you have a preference on the Colts running backs?
I'm always going to try and be light on Taylor just because I don't think he's really shown us much to really think otherwise. But you said it. There's definitely like a little bit of volatility, I think, in this projection overall because you said it. It's kind of been like the hot hand, but also like all these backs are receiving touches in the red zone also. So no one even has like that part of the role super secure. So I like the idea of Wilkins, the pass catching volatility that you get in games where if Jonathan Taylor just isn't going to be involved, you would imagine Wilkins would be. I think that the other running back situation, obviously Derrick Henry, but like I was joking about it, but part of the reason he hasn't really been going crazy lately is because they've been willing to get Deonta Foreman, Jeremy McNichols. Both of these guys have kind of been somewhat involved. So I think there's two ways you can go about it on the Tennessee side. You could maybe add one of those guys to your Derrick Henry teams and hope they just capture the rest of the running volume. If they're ahead in this game, maybe that's a decent spot. Or do we just completely X out Foreman and McNichols from our Henry lineups? Where are you at on that one, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, we know on Showdown you can see some funky stuff. I think there's definitely paths to, if we see a Titans smash here, we've seen Deontay Foreman work in and get a decent amount of carries. So I think that's viable, especially, again, it all has to come down to what kind of slates you're playing. If you're like our line movement CEO, Chris, and you're playing these high, buy-in qualifiers with only, 50 people or whatever, you probably don't want to do that. 12. Yeah, you probably aren't jamming two Titans running backs. But if you're playing these lotto, 10,000 plus entries, I think there's merit to that stuff. And one guy I will mention, he's actually my most owned running back right now on the slate, and that's Nyheim Hines. I just like how he profiles as a ceiling option. I mean, we saw it a couple weeks ago where he gets into the end zone twice. And if you kind of script this out a little bit to the Titans getting up big time, I mean, Hines is the guy that's going to be on the field getting those check downs. And we also know he has the explosiveness to really do some stuff with his touches after the catch. LaMarca, anything else jumping out to you in this game as you build your Showdown lineups?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Deonta Foreman and Jeremy McNichols are not viable options. They would basically have to score a touchdown, I think, and who's getting the work in the red zone, and that's the big dog. I think that Phillip Rivers is too cheap, guys. He's 9,800. That makes him roughly 1,500 less than Tannehill. You can play him. I think people are going to be scared of him because he has looked like a noodle arm quarterback all year. But he's my favorite play on this slate. I'm putting him in the captain slot. I think we're going to get depressed ownership on a cheap quarterback that has moved to being a favorite in this game. And the only reason why is because people have a bias against him. Maybe that bias is true. Maybe he is completely washed up. But this Titans pass defense is trash. So yeah. I think that Phillip Rivers, sneaky captain play as far as sneaky as a quarterback can be. And again, just too cheap. So I think Rivers, I think that this is a good Showdown slate. And the reason why is because that a lot of people are going to be underweight on the Colts compared to Tennessee. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Rivers is my second highest owned guy right now on the slate. He's one of those guys where if I was manually hand building and finessing in here, I'd be getting rid of Rivers left and right. But if I just let the math do its thing, he's projecting very well. And I will push back just a little bit on the Deontay Foreman and McNichols thing. I mean, they're 600 and 200. Like, those guys don't have to do a ton to really help you out there. I mean, it's literally like 20 to 30 yards, catch a couple of balls, and they can easily be in the optimal depending on how the slate shakes out. So that's, again, for the lottos, not your 12-man queues. But Holka, any other final plays here before we move on to the main slate?
Maybe Corey Davis. I think that if people think that the leverage is going to be just straight with A.J. Brown, maybe Corey Davis goes a little bit under-owned after kind of a tough performance last week overall. His price is like a little bit more expensive than I'd like to see. I mean, just having 3 targets last week, but the week before, 2 weeks before, literally has 10 targets in 2 straight games. So we know the ceiling's there for Corey Davis. So I like the idea of maybe going after him in the captain spot. So I like to get a little bit different at captain sometimes with some of these wide receiver plays, especially if there's going to be a really popular running back and then the quarterback captains, obviously.
Yeah, Mike M in the chat. Pete, as the big dog thought leader, is he going to eat tonight?
Sharp brand.
The big dog gonna eat tonight. There it is. I just did my prognostication. I felt the wind swirling around in my office, and the big dog, he is going to eat tonight. All right. Let's move on to this main slate here. We're going to try to touch on as many of these games as we can. We have Detroit hosting the Washington football team. They are 3.5 point favorites, 45.5 over under. What are the Sharps doing with this one, Matt?
Yeah, this game's still off the board at a lot of places. I'm not entirely sure why. It seems like Stafford is pretty much good to go. So maybe we're just waiting for Kenny Golladay. But until this line is back up, it's hard to have a huge feel as to what the pros are doing. Just 340 bets tallied on this game so far at the legal books. So that's all I got for you. Sorry.
Joe, I don't think this is going to be an uber popular game for DFS. I do think we're going to have a couple plays that are, pretty popular as far as Terry McLaurin. Everyone is going to be excited to play him after that monster game. One news and note thing here I noticed today, Kenny Golladay still hasn't been practicing, but TJ Hawkinson also missed practice today, popped up with a toe injury, which is a little concerning because I was kind of interested in him at 5,100 again this week. Is kind of like a pace slightly up to be contrarian, coming off back-to-back games with 10 and 8 targets, I think is pretty interesting. Anything else jumping out to you in this game other than, JD McKissick getting 14 targets last week?
You said it, man. That was going to be like I know that's the kind of guy that you like to play, but I'm just looking through this and I see literally Alex Smith. All he wants to do is check the ball down. Like, that makes me like Terry McLaurin a little less for sure. I know that that's a guy, like, if we're just looking at the data, it's not going to tell you that he hasn't spent as much time with Alex Smith at quarterback, obviously, but top 2 in weighted opportunity rating on the slate over the last 4 games. So Terry McLaurin's fine. I think McKissick is the least interesting. He did only get 3 rush attempts last week, but 14 targets, like you said. There's a little bit of value there for sure at that price point. This game isn't one that I'm super interested in overall. I think the Hawkinson one, in terms of the injury side of things, is something to pay attention to for sure. Pete, can we play DeAndre Swift, or are we just going to play the new DeAndre Swift, JD McKissick? What are your thoughts?
See, the thing that's so frustrating about DeAndre Swift is Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson each had 3 targets last week and 3 catches. I mean, that's just devastating. Like, even if you can just get rid of one of those guys and concentrate that a little bit more around Swift, like, then we're cooking. Like, we've seen this play out over and over. We can deal with 2-man backfields. Antonio Gibson and JD McKissick are actually both very viable right now. And I'm just saying in a vacuum, not factoring in their price, but this situation in Detroit is super gross. I still think he's viable as a tournament option. I think he has a nice ceiling, but it is really tough to be excited about him. I'm seeing a decent amount of ownership on him right now. 11.6 is what Osmo has him projected for. So I don't know, LaMarca, are you messing around with any of these running backs?
Probably not. I mean, McKissick feels too cute. It'd be one thing if he was 4K, but he's 4,900. I get it. I totally get it. He's got like 20 targets in a game and a half from Alex Smith, but it just feels like it feels like there's not a ton of ceiling there if he just has a normal role in the passing game. I want to throw a shout out to Danny Amendola at 3,900.
Yeah.
If Kenny Galladay is out, I think we can definitely go to Danny Amendola again. He had 10 targets last week. He's got a very strong matchup as the slot wide receiver against Washington. Their corners aren't bad, except for their slot corner, Jimmy Moreland. He has a dreadful PFF grade this season. So if Galladay is out, Amendola at 3,900 is definitely a play for me, like particularly a cash game type play. I'm still not 100% sold on his ceiling for tournaments, but I think too cheap for him either way.
Let's move on to this Cleveland-Houston game. We have already seen this total really plummet because of early weather concerns. LaMarca, what are we seeing here? They're 3-point favorites. And are we going to get another replay of what happened a couple of weeks ago versus the Raiders?
Man, I hope not. That was a tough game to watch. But yes, like you said, this total has dropped from 55.5 to 48.5. The majority of the bets on the under, but actually the majority of the dollars have been on the over at the moment. So maybe the sharps are putting on their weatherman hats and saying it's not going to be as bad as expected. But I think the interesting thing to watch here is just the Cleveland rushing attack versus the Texans. Cleveland loves to run the football. They have the 5th highest running rate in one-score games this year. Houston can't stop the run. We know Cleveland is expected to get back Nick Chubb this week, so that's an interesting matchup to watch. I think these Browns running backs could be somewhat interesting here.
Yeah, and speaking of interesting running backs, we also have Duke Johnson, who appears like he is going to get the bell cow role. David Johnson has yet to practice, and the quotes out of Houston camp is that it's unlikely David Johnson is going to play. So how do you think about this Duke Johnson play? Because we'll also talk about Mike Davis at 4,000, Joe, but I assume you're going to be pretty into Duke Johnson at 5,000 as well.
I'm into him for sure. I'm treading a little bit lighter, I think, than most people. Like, has the Duke Johnson thing like ever worked out for us ever? Like, I don't know, man. This one terrifies me. Like I think this is like one that like you plug in like all the math, all the hashtag math says that like the volume's gonna be there. Jam this guy in. I understand it. It also feels like the play that like maybe like 30 minutes after lock, you're like really upset with yourself. Like, why in the world did I play this guy? So I get the price. I think I still prefer Mike Davis for the savings that you get there in a worse matchup, obviously. But I don't know. This one makes me a little bit nervous. I love the passing options in this one. I love that what Watson's been like quietly kind of doing because his price never really moves a whole lot. But I guess there is some weather concerns. So maybe it is Duke Johnson game and I'm just being a fish here.
I'm with you, Joe, because the one thing we've seen play out this year and in a few different spots is where these guys fill in for someone who gets injured early on. And so Duke had a great line. He rushed 16 times, got 4 targets. If I told Joe, you're going to get those 20 touches at 5,000, you're going to play him every time. Mm-hmm. That said, now they have a week to game plan. You don't even know what are they going to do. Are they going to rush Buddy Howell like 13 times and just push Duke back to his role? That is well within the range of outcomes. So I understand your hesitation. I think ultimately it's going to be kind of an ownership play. You know, if he's really starting to push 30, 40%, I'm probably leaning fade. If it stays in check, I think he's probably a pretty good points per dollar play there. The chat is also very interested in talking about, how this Cleveland backfield is going to shake out. If you look at the splits, like it's hard to make the argument, Kareem Hunt is better with Nick Chubb, but the splits actually indicate that. LaMarca, are you buying that Chubb back just being good for the overall offense could help Kareem Hunt, or do you want the 25 touch Kareem Hunt game without Chubb?
I'd prefer the 25 touch game for Hunt. I still think volume is king at the running back position. Maybe there is something to, Hunt being the only player in the league who does better with less opportunities, but I'm not ready to confidently state that. I think Chubb is the play here, though. I think that people are going to be hesitant to target him in his first week back. We talk about this strategy all the time, or at least Pete, I know that's something that you have kind of caught on to. If you played Dalvin Cook in his first week back, You got him at 10% ownership, and he absolutely smashed. I'm not saying Nick Chubb is going to do that, but I think that, 100+ yards and 2 touchdowns is within his range of outcomes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little hard to get talk more about the passing game, not knowing how much the weather is going to impact things. But I mean, Joe, every week, I mean, this Watson double stack is so clean to Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller, and every week people just don't play Will Fuller. And I get that there's going to be win stuff, but I mean, this is one of the highest correlated, under-owned, highest upside stacks week after week.
It feels that way, man, because it's one that we talk about usually kind of like earlier in the week, and we're like, nah, like people are going to be on that. And then like here we are like Sunday morning trying to build Watson teams and see what we can fit in there. And we get them at pretty super low ownership at times even. But yeah, I think the Fuller thing makes people nervous because his price point is a little bit high, like I guess high for some of the guys that he's around. But I still think that he's a great option at 6,700. Like him versus Terry McLaurin this week, I think I still prefer Fuller. I think a lot of people are just going to go to Tyler Lockett in that range. Travis Fulgham in a decent spot against the Giants. Obviously, if you go down a little bit further, you can get to like DJ Chark, Robbie Anderson. So like there's a lot of guys that are even a little bit cheaper than Will Fuller that are a little bit more comfortable to play, I think, for most people. But I'm in. I think that it, like you said, it's just such a clean stack. And if it's just going to leverage me off of the Duke Johnson people, I'm all about that.
Yeah, and before we move on to, I'll also mention, Jarvis Landry is now seeing back to his kind of elite target share now that Odell is out for the season. So I think he's viable in bringbacks if you're stacking that game and the weather doesn't get out of hand. Let's move over to Green Bay, the biggest favorite on the slate, 13.5 home favorites versus the Jags, 50.5 team total or over under here, but 33 of that is the implied team total for the Packers here. LaMarca, no one needs to be told to play Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, but what are they doing with the betting markets here? Are the sharps taking the points?
This is another interesting one to monitor from a weather perspective. 25 mile an hour winds right now forecast in that game, which has dropped this total pretty drastically as well. It opened up at 55 down to 50 or 50.5, depending on where you're looking. This is a pretty even split in terms of the betting on the sides. Packers getting 52% of the early bets, 57% of the betting dollars. But I think that this Jaguars team is a little bit of a trap. They were able to cover for you last week versus the Texans. I think that people saw that. They want to grab the points here, but Aaron Rodgers with extra time to prepare, 15-7-2 against the spread in his career. Aaron Rodgers is a home favorite, 51-30-3 against the spread throughout his career. So he's in a spot where he historically just takes care of business. And I think that this Jags team is terrible. That's not a huge stretch to say. They're probably the second worst team in the league, better only than the Jets. And if Jake Luton plays like we thought he was going to play, and after a 73-yard completion to start the game, he wasn't very good, I think that the Packers have the potential to just completely run away with this one.
Shout out to Ben Hartley in the chat. He hasn't been able to jump on a live show all week, and he missed us. Ben, glad to have you guys. If you haven't subscribed to the Line Movement channel, smash that subscribe button below. Hit the like. We also have the link to the iTunes feed as well. If you prefer to listen to this in audio form, you can subscribe and get that in your podcast app of choice. Joe, do we overthink it? Can we play Devontae Adams as his price, like the price of Bitcoin, just keeps going up, 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 up?
We're going to have to find a way to jam this guy in, I think, Pete. I don't know. I'm interested overall in the Green Bay side of things. I guess the wind is a little bit scary, but our friends over at Sports Info Solutions sent me over some stuff about some man coverage stats for Aaron Rodgers. He leads the league in TDs with 21 and touchdown rate 10% against man coverage. Jacksonville also is generating pressure at the league's lowest rate also, so he's going to have a little bit more time down there. And to kind of compound that a little bit more even, like Devontae Adams targeted on 33% of the team's passes versus man coverage. He has 5 TDs against that type of coverage this year, 26 receptions. The next highest on the team is 7. So I think he's going to be a target hog for us again in this spot. And I think that his price is probably warranted without some, mega studs at running back, depending on what you think about Kamara this week.
Yeah, I mean, this one puts my brain in knots because it's like we're seeing the Michael Thomas level usage where he's just like the salary can't even catch up to his production. On the other hand, it looks like the ownership's going to be there. You know, they're such big favorites that you do worry about them getting it done defensively. I mean, Jake Luton, that guy could definitely throw a couple pick six and just game script the passing game out of this. Pat Thorman has this as a pace down game. I think I'm personally leaning toward the Aaron Jones, Green Bay defense side of things. But again, I'm not going to tell anyone not to play Devontae Adams. It's just at that price and at that ownership, you really need him to go nuclear again, but he's fully capable of doing that. LaMarca, are you going to break our tie? Yay or nay on Devontae Adams at 9K?
I think if the wind is up as high as it's projected right now, I think you can fade him. Wind speeds that fast, greater than 20 miles an hour, have a noticeable effect, on the passing attacks. When it has to get to that level, it has to be, sort of 20 plus miles an hour to really make a difference. But if it gets there, it hurts the passing games. Fantasy Labs has a metric called plus minus that I like to use, which is basically, actual fantasy points minus expected fantasy points. And in win games, we're talking at least 20 miles an hour. Receivers have averaged 3.25 less fantasy points than expectation. So paying $9K for a guy in a subpar spot like that, especially when he's going to be at high ownership, I definitely don't think you need to play him. Like you said, you can play him if you want to, but I am leaning towards not playing him and losing all my money again this week.
Yeah, and there are, if weather doesn't become a concern, I mean, I think there are some other kind of cheap plays that you could correlate here. DJ Chark's price is way up, but Chris Conley at 3K, and even my guy Chenault, like if his hamstring is good here, he's been practicing in limited fashion at 3,800. I think there's some kind of cheap correlation stuff. And I'll also mention, if you think this goes in the other direction, the blowout factor, I mean, we've seen Jamal Williams have a really big role. He's going to catch passes in there, and at 4,000, I mean, he could definitely get there as well. Let's move on here. The New York Giants are hosting the Eagles. The Eagles are 3.5-point road faves, 44.5 over under. I believe the second lowest on this main slate, the lowest on this main slate here. Kind of gross, LaMarca. Is anyone betting this one?
Yeah, a lot of people. This is actually the third highest bet game of the day, or on the main slate so far. A lot of people like Philadelphia. 63% of the spread bets, 74% of the spread dollars. It should be noted, Philly is coming off of a bye. Favorites off of a bye, historically 164, 127, and 9 against the spread. That's good for an ROI of around 10%. That said, this year, those teams are just 4 and 8 against the spread. So obviously a much smaller sample size when we're looking at just 2020. I still think this is a trend that makes a lot of sense in the long term. If you take the superior team and you give them additional time to prepare, you should expect them to get the job done more often than not. My biggest concern is I just don't know if Philadelphia is that good of a football team. Doug Peterson historically hasn't fared well coming off of a bye. So I'm not as bullish on this game as some of the sharps are, but the sharp side definitely appears to be the Eagles.
Joe, I don't think this game is going to catch much ownership at all for DFS outside of Dallas Goedert at 4,200. I think tight end's so gross. I think he'll be fairly popular, but nothing egregious. If we go back to our guys coming off of injury discount, I mean, Miles Sanders checking that box at 6,400. Any plays in this game jumping out to you?
Yeah, mostly just the tight ends for me. You mentioned Goddard. I think he's still a guy that has top 3 upside. I want to be early on Dallas Goedert, but this is like one of the first times we're seeing this Eagles team be at least close to being fully healthy on the offensive line. The skill players around Carson Wentz as well. So I guess we'll see a little bit more from Carson Wentz in this spot, we would think. So I like Goddard a little bit. Last week he ran a route on 74% of dropbacks. Evan Ingram on the other side of this game, I think, is still super interesting at 4,500. Philadelphia 32nd in the league at defending the tight end. Evan Ingram 9, 10, and 10 targets over his last 3 weeks. So he's seeing volume. Hasn't been like a huge ceiling there by any means, but I think we kind of got to take what we can get at the tight end position these days. You agree?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Goddard's a good play. Evan Ingram as well. We didn't even mention him in the other game, but I think even Logan Thomas at 3,300. I mean, his target role is just so assured. So yeah, I think those plays are fine. I mean, Sterling Shepard. I mean, in his healthy games this year, he's averaging 8 targets a game. So I mean, again, as opposed to maybe paying up for some of that volume, I mean, you can get Sterling Shepard for 5,000. You did mention the Eagles being healthy. Alshon Jeffrey's back in practicing in full. So him at 4,000, I'm probably not going to do it. I think it's more of a big knock to Travis Fulgham, who's priced up at 6,400. I think it's really hard to stomach that price tag with all of these guys coming back. And I don't know, I'm a sucker for these young guys, but man, Jalen Reagor has that explosive profile we want. I mean, he's going to be kind of the Deshaun Jackson in this offense, and I think even a little more dynamic than that. So at 4,200, if you're trying to correlate a couple pieces in this game, Reagor's someone I'm interested in as of now. LaMarca, anything we forgot here?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people hype up Reagor, so you're definitely not alone on Reagor Island. 4,200 feels like a pretty good price tag for him. He played on a lot of snaps in his first game back, saw 6 targets, had a touchdown. So if you're buying the young guys, Reagor makes sense.
Pete, now you got me nervous, man. Like everyone wants to play Dallas Goedert, but we're talking about Miles Sanders being back. We're talking about Reagor. We're talking about like all these guys coming back from injury. Like what if it ends up just being super spread out and there really isn't a lot of value here? It's so much less condensed than we've seen the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, to me on Goddard, it's almost so, and I know it's not fun because people want to get their hands in the dirt and they want to talk matchups and all of this, but it's like with these cheap tight ends, you just don't want to play the most popular one because we know the floor is like 0 or 1 for almost all of these guys. So I think you just got to watch Goddard's ownership. If he's under the 10% range, I think he's a pretty nice play. And, the thing is we've seen Goddard and Ertz coexist in this offense. And now you remove Ertz. I think Goddard's really talented just as a football player. So I'm less worried about him getting squeezed by, an Alshon coming back or whatever. But it is something to keep tabs on for sure. Let's move over to this Tampa Bay Carolina game. Carolina is hosting Tampa Bay, still a 5.5 point road favorite, even after their shellacking on Monday Night Football the other day. 50.5 over under. LaMarca, are people spooked on these Bucs, or are they going back to it?
Yeah, I mean, the betting numbers here are fascinating for me. I thought that this would be a prime spot for the Sharps to target Tampa Bay as a bounce back team. But Tampa's getting 53% of the bets, but only 35% of the dollars so far. So that could be an indication that the Sharps are actually targeting the Panthers here, but I just don't see it. The teams coming off of a blowout loss are historically very profitable to go back to the following week. The Bucs lost by 35 last week to the Saints. Teams coming off a 28-point loss, when we're talking about good teams with a winning percentage of above 50%, those teams are 27-13-1 against the spread the following week. And then, of course, Tom Brady off of a loss is just the absolute GOAT. 38-14 since 2004. That's good for a 73% cover rate. And he's 2-0 in that situation so far this season. So I think there's enough here to play Tampa Bay, but it does appear that the early betting activity is actually pointing in the other direction.
Joe, as far as DFS, we are seeing kind of a similar thing play out here where Waller and Josh Jacobs are fairly popular. They get a large amount of touches for the Raiders, and then things are kind of spread out on the Bucs. People get a little spooked that everything's going to be spread all around. Is anyone jumping out for you, knowing that you can probably get any of these Bucs wide receivers under 10% if you want?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think that I'm still the most interested, I think, in Mike Davis in this game. I know you probably hate to hear that, Pete, but I do prefer him to Duke Johnson. I think just like the savings you get moving down from Duke Johnson to Mike Davis, like I think this guy still has a legitimate chance to touch the ball, 23, 24 times. The
Wait,
matchup couldn't be much
time
worse,
out.
right?
I just did the Joe Holka thing where
I was not going to call you out, but I'm glad.
Why were you going to call me out? You
I
can't
was
just
so
let me
confused.
talk.
You're talking about Darren Waller and you're talking about Josh Jacobs. I was like literally just like, actually you didn't do the full Joe Holka because I talked about 3 teams in one take once. Remember that?
Yeah, no, that was I was selecting my tabs here in my filters in my spreadsheet, and I accidentally clicked Raiders, and so then I'm like, wait, did these guys just play? I apologize.
I was just going right into the Mike Davis take for you, man. It's all good.
Yeah, talk about Mike Davis, the right guy here.
Yeah, Mike Davis is the stone min. He's going to touch the ball 24 times. That's basically the take. It's not a good matchup. This is a matchup that definitely has limited Christian McCaffrey in the past, so if you believe it's just a very similar role, it's possible. He doesn't have like a huge ceiling, but I think the floor definitely there at that price tag. I think that it's kind of interesting to go to the other pass catchers in this game as well. Robbie Anderson priced up a little bit for good reason. The type of volume that he's seeing down the field is extremely valuable for sure. I think I'm a little bit more worried about DJ Moore because I think Curtis Samuel is kind of digging into that role a little bit more. At least recently, he's getting a little bit of work on the ground as well. We talked about that with Harmon on my show earlier this week, that I think that Curtis Samuel at that price point is super interesting in this game. I don't have a ton of plays, I don't think, on the Tampa Bay side, so I don't know if this is like a full stack scenario for me. It seems kind of spread out a little bit there too. We saw Antonio Brown come in and have like a legit role in this offense, so I think that definitely hurts Rob Gronkowski. Maybe still make an argument for Chris Godwin at 6K, but I'm definitely more interested on the Carolina side. Any other thoughts on this game now that you know which game we're talking about?
Now that I have my frame of reference, I am ready to go down with the DJ Moore ship. I think this is one of those things, and I'm really having to separate my biases of, this is still a small sample size, and we've still seen DJ Moore get a lot of work in this offense. His Whopper is the same as Allen Robinson's right now, if you're trying to, gauge what his level of workload is on the season. So I'm not spooked on DJ Moore. I don't think this is a game I'm going to stack up, but I do think there's ways, if you want to play Mike Davis, which you should want to play Mike Davis. He is a smash play, but maybe figure out ways to get unique with your construction. Maybe you play both Mike Davis and DJ Moore. Maybe you bring it back with one of the wide receivers, something like that, to give yourself access to an outlier outcome, as opposed to being like, hey, let's all play an 8v8 with our lineups, as opposed to, just eating that chalk. So that's definitely something I'm thinking about. LaMarca, any other final takes on this game?
I'm fine with playing an 8v8 with Mike Davis. I think he's a free square this week, so I'm just jamming him in. Other than that, I don't think I have any interest in Carolina. This Tampa Bay defense, despite the fact that they got roasted last week by the Saints, they're still very good. So if other people want to play these these Carolina pieces, I'm going to let them and look to hopefully make better decisions.
LaMarca's with you, man. He's playing Darren Waller in this game, obviously.
Speaking of Darren Waller, he is playing this week. They are hosting the Denver Broncos. They're 5-point favorites, 50.5 over under. Let me make sure I have my filters correct. LaMarca, who's betting this one?
Yeah, this right now is heavy Denver money. 53% of the bets, but 73% of the dollars. We've got some injury stuff to watch here. Denver was without their top 2 cornerbacks last week, and the Raiders were without 3 of their starting offensive linemen. So whichever team gets healthier, I think, is going to be the side that you want to be on here. But that Raiders offensive line in particular, if they're still missing a starter or 2, that could be big problems against Denver. Denver has been very good rushing the passer this year. They are 6th in adjusted sack rate. So if that Denver defensive line is going up against a weakened Raiders offensive line, I think that Denver can win this game outright.
Yeah, everything I said about the Raiders a few minutes ago still stands. And as far as the Broncos here, I mean, Jerry Jeudy is getting absolute insane volume right now. I mean, he went off last week and is still in the air yards by low model, meaning he's underproducing relative to his volume. which is insane. The early ownership numbers are low that I'm looking at. That's going to get steamed up. He's 5,600. I imagine he clocks in at around 20 to 25% in the smaller field in single entry stuff by the end of the week. Holka, what are you seeing here with this game? Is this one you're looking to stack up or pick your spots?
Yeah, spoiler alert. This is one of the stacks in the stacks video this week. I love the Denver side of this game overall. You mentioned it with Jerry Jeudy. I think kind of the interesting dynamic surrounding Jeudy is that it's kind of similar to Justin Jefferson. They move him out of the slot into the perimeter. Obviously, we see all the route running clips on Twitter. He can definitely win on the outside, so I thought that was relatively sharp. His price is definitely at a spot where it makes a ton of sense. We know that there's a quarterback in this game that's willing to chuck it deep. Say what you want about how he's been in terms of Drew Lock most of the game. So if you play this stack, you're probably not going to want to watch this game overall. But I do think there's some upside there. I love KJ Hamler. He ran a route on 75% of dropbacks last week, 10 targets, 109 air yards. So again, we're still kind of witnessing the Jerry Jeudy coming out party, 341 air yards over the last 2 weeks after being moved out of the slot, like I said. But I do think KJ Hamler, if you're looking for some savings, 3,800. Obviously, you can add Noah Fant to that as well. Albert O did go down with that ACL injury. Very condensed target share, I think, overall for the Broncos. So I'm super interested here.
Yeah, it is definitely a cheap stack and lots of options. I mean, you can even toss Tim Patrick in there as well. Has been very solid. I do worry a little bit about Drew Lock. He did clear 300 yards for the first time this season. A lot of it was in comeback mode there, throwing 48 times down the stretch. So I worry about him. Thorman has this as a pace down game. So if it gets a little slower, I worry about that. But I think you could definitely play that game script. And I actually think, Joe, if you're going to double stack him, you could do Josh Jacobs as the bring back and try to play that game script correlation with Jacobs salting it and then Denver trying to play catch up mode. So I don't mind that if you're going to correlate. Let's move on here to one of the sexier games this week. And I should also mention, we have already entered into the 4 p.m. zone with these games. We have a balanced slate, LaMarca. For the first time, they finally listened to us. I mean, we're going to have so many late swap options this week. Are you amped for the loaded 4 p.m. games?
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing. I think you can play some early slate and some late slate, considering that they're both going to be at least 5 games. This is going to be a great Sunday of NFL football.
Yeah. And I think one of the marquee games this week, highest over under on the slate, it's Arizona hosting Buffalo, 56.5. Who are people betting here? I don't have a good read on it.
Yeah, heavy dollars coming in on the Cardinals. 42% of the bet tickets, but 70% of the bet dollars. And this is the highest bet game of the week so far.
Suck it, Leone.
The sharp C value with Arizona, and I agree. Buffalo, to me, coming off of a bit of a fraudulent result last week. I mean, Josh Allen played fantastic, but Seattle's defense is just atrocious against the pass. They're on pace to give up 1,000 more passing yards than any other team in NFL history. I mean, they have been that level of bad. They also benefited from winning the turnover battle 4-0 in that game. So I think that Buffalo is a bit fraudulent. I think Arizona is better than them. And this spread right now is saying that these two teams are pretty much even on a neutral field once you adjust and give the Cardinals the 2.5 points for home field advantage. So Cardinals, one of my favorite plays of the week.
Joe, are you and Leone? I mean, we'll be going live on the Tilt Space. I think we've actually talked about going live a little bit earlier this week just because we have all of these games. So maybe it might be like a 5:30 Eastern start time as opposed to 6:30. Are you and Leone going to make a little mayoral bet here for this Bills-Cardinals game?
We should. I've been trying to goad them into something. We've got to do something in this game. Everyone's starting to all the sharps on the Cardinals, obviously, which isn't surprising at all. That's the side you want to be on. Just in life, probably just don't be on the Bills side and come to the Cardinals. The water's warm. But I'm with you, with LaMarca on this game. I think it shapes up really well for points. Pete, I got to pump your tires a little bit, man. You were pumping the Stephon Diggs train from the very beginning of him just being underpriced. He's still 7,500. He's basically the same price of DeAndre Hopkins, but I like Stephon Diggs significantly more still in this spot. Like I think that his usage downfield with Josh Allen willing to chuck it deep against the secondary, something I'm still going to be going back to. DeAndre Hopkins, like say what you want about him, like since Christian Kirk has been back, he hasn't been seeing the volume that like we kind of come to, I guess, appreciate from a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. So 8 targets, 7 targets, 12 and 3 over his last 4 games. That's not necessarily anywhere near where it was at the beginning of the season when Christian Kirk was out. So I'm a little bit concerned because Kyler finally showed the ability to just be like, all right, I'm just going to throw it to the open guy. So that doesn't really bode well for DeAndre Hopkins in terms of the volume he's seen over the last little while.
Yeah, and I also worry that he's not maybe 100% healthy. You know, he was a little banged up a few weeks back, and it's kind of coincided with his target dip. But yeah, I think Stephon Diggs again at 7,500 is one of the best plays on the slate. I think he'll be owned, kind of reflective of how strong of a play he is, and we might have to get creative here with some leverage plays. The other interesting thing is Kenyon Drake was back at practice this week. So everyone was hoping for another 28 touch game from Chase Edmonds. I don't think we're going to get that. He's priced up maybe a little too high to still use as part of a committee, but he still is getting the high value touches. He still is the back you want here. LaMarca, how are you handling the Arizona running back situation as of Thursday at 8:16 p.m. Eastern time?
Yeah, if Drake's back, I don't want either of them. I think that my philosophy with Arizona in this game is I'm going to be underweight on everyone except Kyler Murray. You know, Kyler is the kind of guy that you don't necessarily need to stack to find success. I mean, you could argue that his upside plays are when he's rushing in the touchdowns, and you know, he had over 100 yards on the ground last week. So yes, he can find success with his teammates. Obviously, he is a quarterback still, but like I think stacking up Arizona with 3 plays and then trying to bring it back with a guy or two on Buffalo, like I don't necessarily know if that has the upside that you're looking for. I think you might be better off just going with like a skinny Kyler stack or even a naked Kyler stack.
Yeah, and these the other thing I think I like doing with these kind of games is, you know, we're going to have some of these chalk pieces at the lower end that become popular, but getting kind of a one-off ancillary piece in this game, similar to the David Moore play last week, you know, priced very cheaply, always has upside in a high scoring game. I'll toss out Gabriel Davis here at 3,400. He had 5 targets last week and had a touchdown called back. It actually should have been a touchdown. They called him out at the 1 yard line. And, you know, if you're trying to get leverage in this game or play it as a one-off and you're not stacking it, I think there are some interesting leverage plays like Gabriel Davis. You could even toss in Zach Moss there. We can see what Christian Kirk's ownership comes at. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with this game yet, but I know I'm going to have pieces of it. Let's move on here. We also have another sexy game here in the Rams hosting Seattle. They are 1.5 point home faves, 55.5 over under. Who are people betting here?
Yeah, this is another interesting game because unsurprisingly, everyone is just pounding away on Seattle. 59% of the bets, but 87% of the spread dollars early in the week. That's caused this number to drop to just 1.5. I kind of like the other side, though. I mean, I think that Seattle is pretty overrated at this point. You know, they were getting back Jamal Adams and Carlos Dunlap last week. That was supposed to help their defense. It absolutely did not. They gave up 44 points to Buffalo, who had been pretty mediocre offensively the 4 weeks prior. Now you've got Sean McVay getting time to design an offense against this defense, given that he was on bye last week. Seattle actually has a worse Pythagorean win expectation than the Rams. So I kind of like the Rams. I feel like I'm on an island a little bit here with that one, but I will be on the Rams this week.
Holka, people aren't going to play DK Metcalf again. I can't believe it, but it's going to happen. Are we going back to the DK well?
Yeah, like I guess I'll just continue to say like it's a bad cornerback matchup for them, not for TK Metcalf. This guy is an absolute savage. Have you seen this guy? There's literally the videos that kill me the most with DK Metcalf is where like someone just runs into him and he looks like literally he's just Megatron out there and like he's bounce right off of him like he's made of stone. It's wild, man. This guy, like they're giving him the ability to run more than just these kind of these deeper routes down the field, and he's really taking advantage of that. So yeah, I'm all in on Metcalf, especially if people are going to be scared of that matchup. I think that I'm with LaMarca as well. That the side that I think is probably most interesting is going to be the slot for these Rams wide receivers. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, both these guys run the majority of their routes in the slot. Overall, Kupp's been a little bit better of the two this season, 54 targets in the slot. We know that Seattle, that's where I guess you can attack them anywhere. That's a place where they've definitely been giving up a ton of volume. Seattle also plays a ton of zone coverage. Just historically, Kupp has just destroyed zone coverage over his career, but at least this year, 25 receptions versus zone this season. I think that Cooper Kupp is in an absolutely smash spot in this game. So he's probably my favorite play in this game, but you're going to make me play DK Metcalf, and I'm not mad.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing here. I think all four of these wide receivers, Metcalf, Lockett, Woods, and Kupp, are great plays. I'm probably going to ultimately play the ownership game on those and just break ties in favor of the lower owned guy. Similar to that other game, I do think there's some interesting leverage plays here. I mean, Josh Reynolds popped up in the air yards buy low model 3,500. We just know how forgiving the Seattle defense is. All of these games end in shootouts, pace up games. So I think we're trying to get as many pieces of these games as we can. I also think the tight ends are kind of interesting too. You know, if you want to punt it off with a Gerald Everett, a Tyler Higbee, they're affordable. Jacob Hollister, he led the Seattle Seahawks in routes run last week, had 6 targets. He's only 2,500. 2,600. Disley is 2,500. So, man, I hate thinking about tight end. I hate taking zeros. So if you can give me access to one in one of the higher scoring games of the week that's attached to Russell Wilson for 2,600, like I'm interested in that. LaMarca, are you going to tell me it's thin?
Yeah, it's thin. But you could do, you know, like I think I said that exactly to you last week. I'm never going to argue against playing someone attached to Russell Wilson. I think you hit the nail on the head with Josh Reynolds. I love Josh Reynolds as a contrarian part of a game stack here. I mean, I know for a fact I'm going to have a Goff stack with either Kupp or Woods and Reynolds, and then bringing it back with Metcalf. Like, you can already pencil that lineup in for me this week. So
I can't play
I'm all
Goff,
on
man.
board Josh Reynolds.
I can't do it. Like, do I just have biases there, Pete? Like, are you willing to play Goff? I just feel like the ceiling is nowhere near some of these other guys. But like, obviously, this game environment is incredible.
Seattle, Joe.
I get that's what I'm saying. I'm asking the question. I'm asking the question. Is this my biases that I just refuse to play Jared Goff in this perfect spot? I don't know if I could do it.
LaMarca, you know who also was playing Seattle a couple weeks ago? Jimmy Garoppolo.
Facts.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I will say, like, I would be more into him if his price was lower. I mean, 6,500. Right. The algorithm is hip to this Seattle defense, so that worries me a little bit. I do think the Rams are elite GPP plays in general, just because McVay is so scattershot with his game plans, and you never know what they're going to do, to the point where I think ownership will stay relatively in check on maybe everyone outside of Cooper Kupp, who I think will end up being very popular by the end of the week. So yeah, this is another one of those things where it's hard to tell where people are going to go in this game, but I think there's lots of interesting leverage spots here at basically every price point too. So definitely a game I'm going to want some action on. Let's move on here. The New Orleans Saints are going to be hosting San Fran. The aforementioned Jimmy Garoppolo will not be playing. It will be Nick Mullins behind the wheel. They are 9-point home favorites, 49-point over under. It does seem like the Saints are getting more healthy with Michael Thomas. LaMarca, are people taking the points with San Francisco here?
Absolutely not. Between San Francisco playing so bad and the Saints looking like juggernauts last week, I don't think Vegas could set this line high enough. So far, New Orleans, 71% of the spread bets, 81% of the spread dollars. This line's already moved to 10. I typically want to be the guy that's fading teams coming off of a huge week like that, but it's hard with a team like New Orleans because that's the team we were expecting to see all year, right? And there was a legit reason why they played so much better, and that was Michael Thomas being back in the lineup. So I think that I'm not looking to buy the Saints because it feels like you're buying them at a high point right now. But at the same time, I'm never betting against them with Nick Mullins at quarterback.
Joe, do you need a prove it week from Michael Thomas? Because at 7,400, that is very affordable if you're going to project him for 8+ targets here.
Man, I want to like Michael Thomas in this spot so bad after last week. He went 5 for 51 on 6 targets, obviously. I after looking into it a little bit more, I do have some concerns, and it has more to do with the 49ers. So their pass rush just isn't the same without Nick Bosa, right? They have so many issues in coverage at both linebacker and in the secondary, and we literally just saw it. Like that Drew Brees is willing to just get the ball out so quick anyways, and he's going to just throw it to the guy that's open. He's going to spread it around. So like, yeah, I understand that Michael Thomas, he's probably underpriced if you think he's going to skew back to that volume he saw before, but 12 guys caught balls for this offense last week. So that's the concern. I guess the bullish take is that this defense has been absolutely eviscerated by number one options. 10 receptions to Adams, 12 to Metcalf, 14 to Nuke. So they've just been getting smoked by elite wide receiver ones. So maybe I'll get there by the end of the week. I'm kind of split down the middle right now if I'm going to do it or not. But that's the guy. I don't know. What do you think about Kamara? I haven't spent a lot of time on Kamara yet.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's going to be an ownership thing for me. I'm not too worried about, Michael Thomas eating into his workload. I still think he's going to have an elite workload. And if he gets lost in the shuffle, similar to, I know he's not coming off an injury, but people didn't want to pay the price tag for Christian McCaffrey last week. If he kind of falls in that bucket, I think he's an elite play. And I also think there's some interesting correlation pieces. You could go back to Richie James at 4,000, a 0.97 Whopper last week, just dominating his opportunity there. They do get Brandon Ayuk back this week, who I think is also a pretty good play at 5,700. He was getting most of the work that Richie James was getting. So this is a game where I think you can pick your spots. Do you guys have a take on Jerick McKinnon and JaMycal Hasty here? I think McKinnon projects fairly well if you assume the game script that Vegas does, LaMarca.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I thought that Hasty was going to be the primary runner last week, and he basically was a complete non-factor. He played on 15 snaps. I know that game got away from them, but it's not like he was even playing really all that much in the beginning of the game. So I don't think you can trust Hasty at all this week. If you're playing someone, it's McKinnon. But again, I just don't know if we need to go there with Mike Davis, with Duke Johnson. It feels a little bit thin to me compared to some of those other plays, but obviously that means you'll get him at super low ownership. I just want to say that don't overthink Michael Thomas at 7,400. Just lock him in. Okay. That's too cheap for him.
All right, there you go. LaMarca gave you the stamp of approval when he hobbles off with an ankle injury. Please send him all of your angry tweets, and he'll just say, trust the process.
Welcome when he goes off for a 30 burger.
There you go. Then you also have to send him some nice tweets, which LaMarca always deserves some nice tweets from you guys. Speaking of tweets, follow the Line Movement Twitter handle, smash the subscribe button, hit the like button. We are going to wrap up here with this last game on the main slate. Miami, the Tua-led Miami Dolphins, our Dolphins, fins up, praise the Laird. 2.5-point home favorites here, hosting the Chargers, 48.5 over under. I think this game's going to kind of fly under the radar as far as DFS, get lost in the shuffle around all of these other games. Keenan Allen will be popular at 7,100. LaMarca, are people betting this? Are they too distracted by all the other shiny objects on the slate?
No, people like this game, and it's an interesting one. Could be a potential sharps versus squares showdown. Dolphins 59% of the bets right now, but the Chargers actually 57% of the spread dollars. So that's why this line has dropped. It originally opened Dolphins -3. Now it's all the way down to Dolphins -1.5. I have been driving the Dolphins bandwagon. I think that this team is a playoff team in the AFC. Their defense is legit, but this is a completely different dynamic for them now. Now they've had a week of hearing about how good they are. Tua went from somebody who was playing for his job to now he's being compared to guys like Justin Herbert, who have been significantly better than him this season. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but I'm just sticking with my evaluation here. If you think that the Dolphins are a better team than the Chargers, which clearly I do, then this line is just too low at the moment.
Joe, we got some interesting spots here for fantasy. Preston Williams has been placed on IR, and man, it was looking like a second game where he had flipped Devontae Parker in the kind of alpha target role there for the Dolphins. But then, Devontae Parker finishes the game with 7 targets, and he now has a lot of target up for grabs here at 5,000. Do you like Parker here?
Yeah, I like Parker quite a bit. I think that the one thing that was, I guess, encouraging about Tua is I didn't expect him to use his legs as much as he did last week. So at 5,600, a pretty cheap stack there with Parker. So I like that. He's been willing to kind of give it to his playmakers, which I can always respect from a young quarterback, just at least give him a chance. So I like that quite a bit. Obviously, Keenan Allen on the other side of this game seems like the flagship play overall, even at 7,100 in this spot. I'm kind of trying to figure out if there's anything here with these tight ends. Do you have? I never get Hunter Henry right. I'm basically going to redact him for my brain, I think. But I am a little bit interested in Mike Gesicki. Thoughts?
Hang on. I just real quick want to ask LaMarca, did you happen to see who scored a touchdown for the Titans here on this first drive?
Uh-oh. Don't tell me it was
You
one
just
of
want to
these
take a
bum
guess?
running backs.
Do you want to take a guess? Just name a guy, baby.
Oh my God.
Jeremy McNichols.
Deontay Foreman, close enough.
Can we zoom into this? Hang on one second. I just got the Chris text. Wait, no, that's not the text. Hang on. This is worth it. I promise you this is worth it. Guess who he played?
You are so happy right now.
He played Devontae Foreman?
He has Devontae Foreman in his lineup, currently winning 117K. Is that good? Is that
What
good?
a fish.
Attaboy, Chris. Hope it holds for you, brother.
I don't want people to be upset at LaMarca. I just want people to remember I touted Deontay Foreman. If their name starts with a D and has an apostrophe in the name, I touted them. DeAndre Swift, Deontay Foreman. We did it.
Actually, game left, fellas.
A lot of game left. He cost 600. He's already paid off his salary. Get out of here.
Good.
Let's see. But back to your question, Joe. So my issue with Gesicki is they are using Adam Shaheen in this Dermot Smythe guy a lot. And it's just really kind of suppressing his target share. Only had 4 targets last week, and they're using those other guys in the red zone too. So Gesicki, I still think always has a decent amount of upside just because they'll use him deep down the field. He has a pretty good, yards per target there, but I am a little worried. But again, 4,300 for him, 4,100 for Hunter Henry. No one's going to play them. I think if you're kind of correlating with it within this game, hoping it goes a little over what they project, I don't mind it, but they're definitely not my favorite plays here. LaMarca, anything else jumping out to you in this game as we wrap up?
You got to go with the Jakeem, the Dream Grant, Miami defense correlation stack. You don't have to do that, but it's an interesting thought. I mean, Grant could potentially step into a bigger target share, with Preston Williams going down, and he's already somebody who was returning value at a pretty consistent basis. No ceiling, so maybe that changes, but obviously what you love about him is he has the potential to run a kickback. So if you want to pair him with the Dolphins D, I don't think it would be the worst play in the world. Miami's D is very good, and they're cheap this week, and Justin Herbert has shown some turnover proneness early in his career.
Yeah, I don't mind the Jakeem Grant call at all there at the minimum. I think he's a pretty solid play and has that nice upside. Let's wrap up here with just our favorite bet or favorite play in these island games here. Baltimore on the road in New England. They are 7-point favorites. I'll just say, I'll just go back to the Mark Andrews role. I'm a glutton for punishment. He either does nothing or he goes off for 20 plus points. So I'll say Mark Andrews. I will die on that hill. LaMarca, you got a favorite bet or play here?
Yeah, probably the Bears getting 2.5. This line has just kind of overcorrected, in my opinion. The Bears were 2-point favorites on the advanced spread. Now they're 2.5-point underdogs. Minnesota probably is a better team than Chicago, but I don't know if they necessarily deserve to be 2.5-point road favorites. That's saying that they're 5 points better than the Bears on a neutral field, and that feels pretty aggressive to me.
Yep. Holka, what's your favorite play here on these island games?
Yeah, so I'm trying to avoid Marquise Brown in this spot. Again, Sports Info Solutions sends me a bunch of info about man coverage, and he has been very poor against man, at least in his young career. Against man coverage, his yards per target, 3.2 yards. Against zone coverage, 9.9. Lamar Jackson is probably who's been struggling the most there. He hasn't been the most efficient versus man, at least in his young career. But Mark Andrews, leading receiver, with 6 touchdowns of his 23 against man coverage. So I do like the Andrews call a little bit. Pete, I do have a question, though. Is there no Steelers and Cincinnati game? Is there COVID issues on that or something, or do we just skip it?
Oh, this is my sheet again. This is my sheet. It gets all messed up. You're right. That game is happening at 4:25 p.m.
Cool.
Eastern here. Let's touch on that one. Thank you for pointing this out. I'm a disaster as a host, other than when I'm touting Deontay Foreman, in which case I nailed it. Pittsburgh, they are 7.5-point home favorites here. Cincinnati traveling 47 over under. I'm guessing the squares are betting the Steelers here, LaMarca.
Well, this line is still down at a lot of places since we're still waiting for confirmation that Roethlisberger is going to be able to play. He hit that COVID reserve list because he was in close contact with Vance McDonald. He's going to need to test negative a couple of times before he is officially made active. That could happen as early as Saturday. So we will have some advance notice on that, but we can't really give a thorough breakdown of this game until we know whether or not Roethlisberger is going to play, which is why you skipped it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, I'm willing to take an L, but that was actually the reason, why. Holka, we have all of these Pittsburgh wide receivers here that are all pretty affordably priced, have really nice upside. But like LaMarca mentioned, we do have QB uncertainty here. Any plays jumping out to you?
Yeah, I'd be a little bit spooked if we don't have Roethlisberger in this game overall. I don't think there's a ton of plays. I almost just let you skip it because there's really not a lot there. I think on at least the other side of the ball, I do have concerns about Joe Burrow against the Steelers defense. Like most quarterbacks, he definitely struggles a little bit more while under pressure. His yards per attempt, 7.6 while not under pressure this year, but while under pressure, it drops down to 5.0 yards per attempt. So the young gun has struggled a little bit like most quarterbacks do under pressure, and that's going to be a problem against the Steelers in this spot.
Yeah, I'll also mention Joe Mixon didn't practice again today. I mean, we might get Gio Bernard here at 5,400. I mean, he's not like the Mike Davis 4,000, but he would be a very good play at 5,400, just knowing he's going to have that pass catching role. And I'll also mention, I know people are worried about James Conner. They threw the ball a ton against the Cowboys, which people didn't expect. Another thing I saw our friend Ben Gretsch was writing about, that they did a bunch of no running back sets as well, which really lowered the volume for the running backs. They were using Ray McLeod as kind of the 4th and 5th receiver in all these wide receiver sets. So I'm not too spooked about James Conner. I think he might end up being an elite tournament play if people are worried about him. And I think it was kind of a unique game script dependent thing there. So definitely some pieces here that I think will be interesting, and obviously pay attention on the Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Mixon news as the week progresses. Boys, any final words here?
Should we look at the queue? You guys want to guess Chris's captain again?
Okay, so he has Deontay Foreman in it.
Confirmed. It is not his captain, though.
It is not his. I'm gonna guess he has one of the quarterbacks. I'm gonna guess he has
the big dog.
Would he play the big dog and Foreman in the queue?
Joe says he always plays a running back in captain spot.
It is true. I'm worried. I'm gonna go with my heart, though. I'm gonna say he played Phillip Rivers in the captain.
LaMarca? Big dog? Is that your final answer?
Final answer.
He has the Ryan Tannehill to Foreman stack. With Tannehill at captain. He is leading the queue right now. Chris, I hope you take it down, my friend. This is a great start. He's the only guy in the queue that has Foreman, which is solid. He faded the big dog. So he's got Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Foreman brought it back with the Rivers and Pittman stack. He went 4-2, Pete, and he's already got his value taken care of. It's a great start. Let's fucking go.
Chris, I'm glad he didn't listen to LaMarca and fade Deontay Foreman.
It was really trying to find a Deontay Foreman lineup in the $100 single entry, and it doesn't exist. I don't know if he got played by anybody.
Well, that's why you got to come down to the $3.20 max streets with me, and we got all the Deontay Foreman in these lineups, baby. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. As we mentioned, we will be back on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Joe, Dieter, and I walking the Week 10 slate with all the late breaking news. And then I think we're going to have a special early edition of the Tilt Space. We did the late edition a couple weeks ago with the Sunday night game on the main slate. This week with all the 4 p.m. games, I think we'll push it up. We'll have some beverages. We'll laugh. We'll cry. We'll tilt. We'll get mad at each other. We'll get mad at the chat. It'll be a grand old time. As I said, make sure you're subscribing to the Line Movement YouTube channel. All of that good stuff. We will see you guys on Sunday.